So what's on the Oklahoma Guru's mind today? Well, it starts about 1977 when I moved in with my brother and my great-grandmother into my great-aunt's house. My mom and dad had not the capacity to raise us, so we were left with a woman of about 55 years old, and my great-grandmother, who was probably about 75 at the time. And we were left there to go ahead and try to make something out of our lives. Well, my great aunt was doing a good job, but she felt like she needed a man in her life to help raise us, because her first husband had died at the age of in 1972. Well, about 1978 or so, she got married to a man named Mel Starkey. Now, me and Mel, we had a pretty good relationship. Not the warm and fuzzy kind, but we had a good relationship. He even, I was probably about 11 years old or so, and he even had me drive a tractor from about 10 miles away from the house with a drag disc on the back of it. It was an old tractor, probably made in the 50s. And so there I was driving on the road at about the age of 11 or so, and him following behind me for 10 miles, about 10 miles an hour. Boy, that was a blast for me. But that was the kind of relationship we had. He just trusted what I could do. Well, let's carry forward a little bit. And about 1998, I'd worked with him throughout after I got out of the Air Force. Let me scratch here for a minute. When I got out of the Air Force back in '92, I'd did a little bit here and there to help him out. He had established a little business where he was building disc and scrapers for tractors, mostly for the grape vineyards, and he did a lot of them. Things got slow every once in a while when it was off season, but as soon as the season came around, boy, he'd sell 30 of them in about a month's time, it seemed like. And so I was over there, and I was between jobs in '98, and I mentioned to him that I'd like to be a part of the business that he was doing. But I was kind of young and kind of worried about my family that I had to raise, and I wanted to make sure that they had enough for themselves, and insurance, health insurance was important. So somebody gave me a call, a place gave me a call and said they needed a maintenance person to hire on there, and so I took the job. And so when I explained that to my great uncle, he was mad, because he thought that I would be able to carry continue the company after he wanted to retire or something. Well, we didn't speak for a while. It'd probably be about 8 months or a year or so. I still loved him, and I'm sure he loved me still, but we didn't talk because we had a falling out. Nothing major or anything like that, but just kind of uneasy about things. But and he sold, and eventually between the time I told him and up to November of 1999, he'd basically sold a lot of his equipment that he used to build disc with. And so I figured he was done. But sure enough, in October of '99, he gave me a call and says, "Hey, AJ, can you give me a hand? Can you come over and talk to me? I need to talk to you about helping me out with a disc and a tractor." And so I went over there, and I was sitting there. We were talking about it, and I said, "Yeah, I'll help you." And it was to go out and pick up a disc and a tractor and put it on the trailer. It was a 9N or an 8N Ford tractor with a 3-point disc. Uh, but there we were sitting there talking. And so let me give you a little background on my great uncle Mel. See, he joined the church before he married my great aunt in about 78 or whatever it was. He stopped going, became inactive about a year later, or less than a year later. And then, so there I am, pretty much 20 years later, talking to him, or somewhere around there. And we started talking about spiritual things, because that was what I was on my mind all the time at that time, because I was investigating the church. I was all over it. So I couldn't wait to talk to people about the gospel. And so as we're sitting there talking about it, he explained to me that why he didn't go to church anymore. He told me that he knew that the gospel was true. And anytime he would sit there, listen in the church, that he'd just start crying profusely. And he would just get embarrassed for how much he would cry. And there was a man sitting there, 80 years old, crying profusely, telling me how much he knew the gospel was true. And I was like dumbfounded by it. Glad to hear it, of course, but I was dumbfounded by it because, again, I would have never guessed that. We had never talked about things spiritual or anything like that, but here's a man opening up to me about his love for the gospel. And so less than 2 weeks later, I got the call to if I was available. I worked swing shift that day, and I told him I could go out there with him, and no problem. And so, sure enough, we went out there to pick up the tractor. But before we went out but while we were driving through town in Madeira, we kept on seeing different things, well, he used to drive tractor trailer, and he had all kinds of stories about driving tractor trailer. He loved to talk about his stories, and I appreciated it. And sure enough, we had a lot of time to reminisce. And we got out there to the place called Fairmead, which is what they would call a one-horse town, out in the middle of a farm, about a quarter mile off the road. And there's nobody around except for me and him. And so he got on the tractor, and he started up the ramps of the trailer. And what had happened is he ran it up there because it was kind of running rough, and the tractor got off on the side of the trailer a little bit, and he stood up. He popped the clutch, and he sat back down, and the tractor fell on top of him, crushing him. Luckily, we had cell phones at the time. I called everybody. I walked out to the road, of course, and waited for the ambulance and people to come so they could help me out. But what a great honor and privilege was for me to know that man, and to know that he had a firm testimony of the gospel less than 2 weeks before he died. Now, I don't know about you, but it affected me, because over and over in my mind for a long time I thought to myself, that could have been me on that tractor easily. And so it weighs heavy on the mind. And because it weighs heavy on my mind, or weighs heavy on anybody's mind, when death is right there at your doorstep all the time, you just never know, then you want to get things right. You don't want to just leave things for chance. And I appreciate so much for my great uncle expressing his testimony to me at the time he did. Because whenever it came down to it, and I was out there all alone, I really was at peace. I'll give you a little thing about how my mind works. See, I troubleshoot electrical equipment, and I do a really good job of it. So I'm constantly going through scenarios on things. But the one scenario I had in my mind about my great uncle for a long time before that day, was that he was going to die with a tractor, loading a tractor. I just couldn't get that out of my mind. I didn't wish for it to happen. I love that man more than you could ever know. I never would have wanted him to leave in such a way. But he did. And that's the facts. And the fact is that I had had those thoughts on my mind about how he would die at least a year before then. I know this sounds like a very tragic moment in my life, but it was a very blessed moment in my life. And I'm so glad for it. And the Lord provided peace at that time and a security of my mind and my heart that he was okay. Though his body laid there under that tractor, he was okay. So I hope this video helps you. And I hope it creates in your mind the desire to appreciate those who we have that are with us still, so that anytime they have a chance to express themselves about their love of God, that we'll listen very intently, because we just never know. Well, it's been good talking to you. And if you have a moment, drop me a comment, or or press the like button, share the video, or subscribe. It's been good talking to you. This is the old Kahoma Guru signing out. You guys have a blessed day.